All right. So Ramon has a question. Ramon wants to know. He posted this in the Hacks group. He said, "I have a project for a church for 4 PTZ cameras and 3 or 4 static cameras. I'm looking at getting PTZ optics cameras with 4 surveillance cameras. I am hoping they all could use IP interface or mix them SDI and IP interface. Any thoughts or suggestions?" Okay, so Tommy, you provide some input as we go along on this. First thing I would do is if they have the budget, is if you're going to be buying PTZ cameras, PTZ optics make very, very, very good PTZ cameras that are a little more affordable than the others that are out there.
Yeah.
A little bit more bang for your buck. So it's kind of like
Plus, you get the service, and if you do have problems connecting them, they will answer your calls to
yes,
help set it up instead of a fly by night.
right. Yes, exactly. I've always likened PTZ optics kind of like if you want to buy a really nice television, like a big 60-inch or something, like a Sony is really nice, or a really, really good Samsung, but you're going to pay those prices for it, right? But if you want the best bang for your buck, the best image, the best functionality for a reasonable price, you go with Vizio.
Yeah.
Vizio is the leader in the value-based ones. It's on the high end of the value-based ones, and they're great. So I always have looked at PTZ optics as kind of like the Vizio of the things. Sony, and I've used Sony cameras, PTZ cameras, $20,000 cameras. Fantastic. I mean, mind-blowingly good, okay? Compare that with a PTZ optics. If you're like really attuned to all the specs and all that kind of stuff, you'll be able to tell the difference. The average person who is doing installs and using them can install PTZ optics and use them for years and just be tickled pink. So I always tell people go with PTZ optics. Now, the PTZ optics has HDMI and SDI cameras, and then they also have an upgrade to those cameras, which are the NDI ones, and it's an extra $100 or $200 per camera for the NDI interface. I say if they have the budget, go ahead and get the ones that have the NDI interface. There's like the 20 by cameras, and there's the 30 by. That's the zoom distance, the telephoto distance. The 30 by is definitely much better than the 20, but the 20 you can save a little bit. You can save $100 roughly on the 20, and then spend an extra $200.
It depends on the size of your congregation.
It definitely does. Yes, I can tell you. I did an install at University Baptist Church here in Fort Worth, and they are a old style cathedral-ish kind of a room. If they didn't have carpet and had crucifixes everywhere, you would think it was an older Catholic church. Very long, 100+ feet from, say, the podium to the balcony.
Wow.
Maybe 80 to 100, a long distance. So we started off with the 20, got the 20 mounted, and we could go all the way up to the podium and do a medium shot, from waist up or so, and track him as he's walking around, and everything looked good. We could go another 30 feet back, maybe 25 feet back to the baptistry and frame up the baptistry nicely, and everything was good. They decided they wanted a little more, and that was with the 20 by. They decided they wanted a little bit more headroom, so they exchanged them for the 30 by. With the 30 by, they could tell you how many dots, how many pores are on the pastor's nose while he's baptizing somebody. Okay, that's the difference. So if you can get away with the 20, I say get away with the 20, save $100 on the cameras, spend the extra 200 or so for the NDI. The NDI, network device interface, that's the protocol. And New Tech, the people that make the TriCaster, they took the idea of an IP camera and rewrote a whole bunch of stuff and came up with this protocol for delivering now up to 4K audio and video down a category 6 network cable. Okay, twisted pair. So
that's the good thing about the NDI is that you run one cable, Cat 6, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
What, 300 feet would be about the limit?
If you're, I think
it's it is 300 feet.
Yeah, okay. 300 feet. But if you're jumping it through a switch, which doing that, you probably will go through a switch or two if you're running around your building. You can actually
take that switch and plug it into your computer. Mm-hmm. You're not worrying about capture cards. Mm-mm. You're not worrying about audio cards or anything like that, because that one cable will power it. Now, it's got to be a PoE switch,
of course,
but it will power it, and you will get your audio and your video, and it will look good.
Yes, and the only thing you have to be concerned about is traffic on the network. Okay, so
yes.
What you can do, depending on the type of network infrastructure you have set up and the type of routers and firewalls and stuff like that you have set up, like most of the Cisco stuff, like the one that's out there right now that everybody's installing is like the Meraki's from Cisco. Those you can basically set up a virtual LAN, and you just take a section of your bandwidth and you take a range of IP addresses or MAC addresses or what have you, and you say these over here are going to be on their own little network, okay? And let's say we have 100 megabits of bandwidth available to us to go through, and we're going to take this much of it and set it aside. Does that make sense?
Dave?
Huh?
It's actually a gigabit now.
No,
everything
I know.
is gigabit now.
No, I know. I'm not talking about that internally. I'm talking about going out the door, 100 megabit network or internet connection and stuff like that. You can even segment off to that so that the people who are using the Wi-Fi or using the network internally working in the offices and stuff like that, that they have only so much of the total up and down bandwidth from the modem, as well as the internal network bandwidth as well. Now,
it's sort of like with a hard drive, you're partitioning off certain sections.
Exactly.
That will only work for that purpose.
Exactly. Now, when you set something like that up, what that gives you is, if that infrastructure is deployed throughout the building, that gives you the ability to, let's say we need to video something that is going on in the fellowship hall. So I'm going to take 2 of these PTZ cameras and the tripods, and I'm going to take them into the fellowship hall, and then I'm going to get some category 6 cable, and I'm going to run it from there into the jack in the wall. Now, of course, depending on power over Ethernet, you may have to go ahead and plug it in, so that you get, your regular old AC power or DC power going to it. But you then just go back to your TriCaster or vMix or OBS or whatever you're using up in the sound booth or in the control room, and camera 1 is still camera 1 and camera 2 is still camera 2. There they are. And adding these devices is really easy because you just go in and add a new input. And like if you're on vMix, you say, add a new NDI device, and then it shows you what's available on your network. It says, hey, here's PTZ optics, blah, 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 and here's PTZ optics, blah, 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 whatever their call signs are. If Tommy is in the other room and he's got the NDI camera app running on his phone, then all of a sudden it says Tommy's phone, and that shows up. It's really cool. Now, you do, depending on the camera that you use, what features it has, or if you have a bridge device. Okay. NewTek makes a device called the Spark, which is basically a little base station, and then you would take a camera and connect it to that. Okay, so it could be a video camera, like a regular old, Canon G20 or whatever, or a Panasonic video camera, or a nice big $10,000, professional camera, whatever, and you connect it to that, HDMI or SDI going into that unit. That unit has the NDI interface. Okay, literally, it could be a DVD player or a Blu-ray player. I mean, just whatever, a video source going into that, and then that can transmit over Wi-Fi or over the wire. Wi-Fi in a very controlled environment will work just fine. I always tell people, use that as your absolute worst case, last resort, okay? Because of radio interference. And the more phones that come in there, the more people that are trying to connect to the Wi-Fi, even if you're not letting them be connected to the Wi-Fi, if their Wi-Fi radio is on their phone, it goes out and goes, hey, anybody? And there's radio waves going around, and eventually you start losing your throughput, with Wi-Fi and stuff. So always go hardwired every time you can.
One more point on this, and this is something I just read in passing. I didn't get the whole thing, and being old, I may have it all messed up in my mind. But NDI has recently came out with an improved version, which my understanding is supposed to lower the bandwidth that it uses,
okay,
as it's going from one to the other.
It's more efficient?
Yeah, very efficient.
Good.
They might have switched to the H.265 instead of 264.
Right. Yeah. And if they did, that's definitely going to give the same quality with, 2/3 as much bandwidth or half bandwidth. So,
yeah.
Now that's something that needs to be checked, because you got to consider the source here.
Of course, yeah, of course. No, but what's neat about the NDI is the flexibility. If you're using HDMI, then and you need to go, let's say you need to go 120 feet, from your balcony, down the, and then in through the little hallway and the aisles, and going all the way down there, and then down the post, and then, to where the thing is, as a crow flies, it could be.
That's something that a lot of people don't think about when they're figuring the cable run, is the up and the down.
Yeah, the up and the down, and the going to the corner and going around the post and going all that. As a crow flies, it's 50 feet. When you start running the cables, it's 75. And depending on the quality of the cable, if you're doing HDMI, and I've run HDMI 100 feet with a really good cable, it cost $150 or whatever. It had the circuitry on both ends to amp up the signal and take it and receive it and boost it up and push it back out. And it was just fine. Didn't have any issues. And then I've had times when I've had a mediocre cable and I can't get 60 feet on it, and you got to go and find an outlet and put a booster in, and it's so that's a pain.
Or switch to
better.
SDI.
I'm sorry?
Or switch to SDI.
Yeah, that's my next item. You can do much better and go much farther using SDI cable. That's the ones that twist in, they've got you got the post, and then it goes in and it locks onto the thing. What?
BNC.
Yes. Talking to novices here, which is why I'm explaining it at a basic level.
Sorry.
You know that I go the cheap way every time.
Of course.
And for the SDI, though, it's a good run. I mean, it's good quality stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end, I bought the cheap adapters going to HDMI. Now, this is for our monitors.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got a, HDMI to SDI converter at the computer.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got a SDI to HDMI converter at each monitor.
Right, to go back into the monitors.
Yeah.
Yep, and those work great. SDI, you can get a lot more distance with the cable, but again, you're going to be running cable. So doing HDMI, doing SDI, you have to run cable. Doing NDI, if you've got a network infrastructure, you ran cable 20 years ago, you may be able to get started with it. Hopefully you have high grade cable, not like, category 5. You're going to want, in a short distance, you may be able to get category 5 or 5E working just fine. But if you got to go distance stuff, category 6, and, now shielded 6 in some cases. So I say if you got the bandwidth, or excuse me, if you've got the budget, go ahead and future-proof these folks and get them some NDI. Now, you were talking about the IP cameras that would be static cameras. Tommy has more experience with the IP cameras. I will tell you that you're going to want to get those sequestered on the network as well, so that there's nothing but them in a virtual LAN, a VLAN, so that they're sending their data back and forth, and not when someone goes to print or someone starts Netflix or something like that, it doesn't get in the way. IP is going to have more lag. Traditional IP is going to have more lag, taking the image in, putting it into IP bitstream and sending it down, and then being decoded and put onto the monitor.
In
Is it a second or two, Tommy?
My experience is, in order for me to get mine close, I'm running about 330 milliseconds delay on my vMix to bring those in. Also, now, of course, I'm using cheap Chinese cameras. And if you can get away without doing that, please do, because they're a little headache. But there is a formula, I call it a formula, that you put in your input. For vMix, it's streaming, and you put that formula in there, and I will furnish that with anybody that wants it. And it's really just the way it's written. It's probably some kind of code, but I don't know what it is.
You can think of it kind of like an RTMP stream. It's you're putting in basically like a protocol, and then the address and stuff like that to get it down there. So, if you have a security camera at home and you're looking at the app on your phone, and you tell your wife to go into the living room where the security camera is and clap, you hear a clap from the other room, and then you're watching, and then you see her clap and you hear it coming through the thing. That kind of a lag, you're going to have to adjust for that that time delay. In his case, it's 330, you said, milliseconds. So about a third of a second or so. That a thousand milliseconds.
Now that's with me looking at the preacher's mouth,
right,
and the words coming out.
Exactly.
I may not be exactly. I'm still tweaking that a little bit. But right now it's set at 330.
And do you find that when you set it that lag remains consistent, or does it ever fluctuate?
I haven't noticed, but okay. I can't say for sure.
Okay. So that's something that you're going to have to contend with. Okay.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind when you do that, because those cameras, those IP cameras, they're basically the weakest link in the production stream. So everything has to be based on them. So you're going to have to delay. You're going to have to introduce a delay of, in Tommy's case, if you were doing an NDI camera with the standard IP cameras, he would need to buffer or delay the NDI inputs by about 330 milliseconds. And then he would also need to delay his audio coming in from the soundboard by 330 milliseconds, so that these real-time items, and NDI is maybe 2 frames of latency on a good network, you'll never notice, right? That's how good it is. You can run NDI, SDI, and HDMI all together and never notice any difference, okay? But you introduce the IP cameras, you will notice a difference. They're the weak link. You have to set your time according to them. And then from that point forward, do everything using your headphones, because you don't want to get confused by hearing what's going on in the room and hearing the, you know, the half a second delay in between the two, basically an echo happening. It's in here. Who am I paying attention to? And now
I'm not saying that that has happened to me,
yeah.
but that's happened to me.
Yes, it gets you find out very quickly how important full over the ear isolating and noise reduction
That's
headphones
what I use.
really help with stuff like that, because you will start making your editing decisions, your cutting decisions based on what you're hearing in the room as opposed to what's going on in your ear, which is actually what's being recorded. So just keep all that in mind, but you can definitely do it. And like I said, go with NDI if you can. You don't have to worry about running cables unless you've got a really old network infrastructure.
The other thing is the Z cams by PTZ Optics are also really good.
Which ones?
Z cams.
Z cams. I've seen them.
They are
good.
They are more the static point cameras.
Right. Like the they're kind of like lipstick cameras and CCD cameras.
The bullet cameras. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could put one of those near the pastor, just for a headshot type thing, it would look really good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the nice thing is about them is they actually take. You could actually, if you have it, you could actually take your old optics, camera optics, and actually with the right adapter, you could actually put them on.
Oh yeah, yeah. They use the they use the C mount, which is
Is that the Canon one or is that the Nikon one?
No, C mount is an old your old 16 and 8 millimeter film cameras. Are C mount, have C mount lenses. So your security cameras that look like little bullets or whatever, those have C mount lenses on them. So you can get an adapter to step it up and put a Canon lens on there if you wanted to.
Yeah, they actually look like if you look at them, they actually look like the old security cameras.
Yep, they sure do. In fact.
But the nice thing is they're SDI and NDI.
Yes, and they're not too terribly expensive. $600, $700, $800 for one. Is not bad. Let's see.
No.
Okay, so here's one of them right here, and this is the C mount lens that's on there.
Mm-hmm.
But this is basically the type of little box cameras that they are.